We all know speed kills, so much so teams like Tech are trying to upgrade that category, and a team like Oregon is the Bill Bowerman OG team for speed, yet it still might not be enough to contain the X factor, Hauss Hejny.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're brought to you by GameTime Tickets. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off at your first purchase. Get squared away with GameTime Tickets today. Meanwhile, we get to slide right into this conversation of Hauss Hejny being potentially a QB2 candidate and how a QB2 candidate can still be somebody that turns this Oregon game completely flipped upside down. And it's no disrespect to UT Martin. The last thing you want to do is look forward, but UT Martin's missing their starting quarterback and their top two returning defensive linemen. And for those reasons, I don't think we have to worry too much about UT Martin, but we do have to worry about Oregon. And I was recently on with an Oregon Space, had a lot of wonderful things to say. But one of the biggest components that they brought up is something that teams in the Big 12, like Texas Tech, are trying to find, is more of that elite track speed. And that is precisely where Hauss Hejny falls into this equation. Some Oregon fans were freaking out about the game. The EA Sports game put out their fastest 10 quarterbacks, and obviously Hauss Hejny was on there at number 4. We're going to make the argument that he should, in fact, be a little bit higher. But there was an Oregon quarterback down at number 10. And I do think that Oregon quarterback could catch Hauss Hejny. The problem for Oregon is there's not very many people that can. Defensively, yes, they do have a cornerback named Roderick Pleasant that is like Tyreek Hill level fast, 10.10 style of speed. Yeah, he's going to catch Hauss Hejny. But outside of him, like Devin Jackson is a linebacker who years back in the state of Nebraska was a 100-meter champ. He ran a 10.54, but that was also 30 pounds ago. Now he's running a 4.63 compared to Hauss Hejny's 4.46. Tez Johnson can catch Hauss Hejny. Evan Stewart, if healthy, would catch Hauss Hejny. DeCorian Moore probably could catch Hauss Hejny, and so could Malik Benson. But they're all wide receivers, and that's the problem. And then Luke Maga, the Oregon quarterback that was listed as one of the top 10 fastest in the country, yes, he could catch Hauss Hejny. The problem is he's also on offense. So you have a backup quarterback that could catch our backup quarterback. You have multiple wide receivers that could catch our quarterback. But defensively, outside of Roderick Pleasant, they have guys like Terrence Ferguson. Used to be a bad mamma jamma, but that was before he put on a bunch of weight. Now he's running a 4.63 40. So is Jeff Bassa. So is Jordan Birch. Jordan Birch actually runs a 6.67 40. So yes, some of these individuals that used to compete in the 100-meter in high school for Oregon, they could catch Hauss Hejny. The problem is this is before 30, 40, 50 pounds and before making the transition to a Division I Power 4 linebacker, defensive end, so on and so forth. For that very reason, Hauss Hejny is the X factor that Oklahoma State fans need to pay attention to. And as it pertains to Cowboy country, I've been in a couple Cowboy spaces and seen some things online recently discussing about how, well, of course, if we have 2 quarterbacks, that means we have 0 quarterbacks. Yes, we've compared this to the 2013 system with Clint Shelf and Jedby Walsh. We've also kind of compared it to the 2015 system with Mason Rudolph throwing for almost 4,000 yards and Jedby Walsh being that red zone guy, being the short yardage guy, being a package guy. And that worked out very, very well. But even Oklahoma State country is doubting what Hauss Hejny could provide. There is this common misconception that if you're playing 2 quarterbacks, that's because you're not sold on the quarterback one. I completely disagree. I think Hauss Hejny is the X factor that not very many teams in the country can prepare for. Maybe at Texas Tech with the upgrades they've made in the roster department. Maybe Oregon to some degree, other than this Roderick Pleasant individual. They have most of their guys that are as fast as Hauss Hejny or faster all on the offensive side of the ball, whether it be backup quarterback or 4 or 5 wide receivers. So, yes, they do have dudes, Hauss Hejny fast. The problem is not very many of them exist on defense. And I'm sure that there's some missing here. I just went off of Google's Oregon's fastest players, and I also put them in conjunction with what they are in the video game. The video game's not the tell-all, but if you go back and look at Athletic Net, Miles Split, and the gaming configurations of who the fastest Oregon Ducks are, there's only one that unquestionably all day, every day can beat Hauss Hejny, and that is Roderick Pleasant. So, yes, there is a DB that is way faster than Hauss. That's something that we have to take into consideration. But outside of him, it ain't so, Joe. In Oklahoma State country, we're used to having some fast dudes. But we got to put it in context because there's still a lot of Oklahoma State faithful that are doubting the fact that we might have another quarterback enter the game. And if we do, that means that we're not completely sold on Zane. I think we need to put that to bed because, yes, we've all heard that Hauss Hejny is fast. We've all heard that he has a 10,600 meter time. We've all heard that, he's hit that 21.75 miles an hour last year at TCU. We've all heard a lot of these things, but to put it in context is important for Cowboy country. Hauss Hejny is listed below Austin Carlisle, who, yes, verifiably 10.56 100-meter time. He's faster than Hauss. Taylon Green, who we faced last year at Arkansas, has a 10.72, so not even close to Hauss, but he did reach over 22 miles an hour this previous season, which would trump Hauss Hejny's 21.75. Then they have Haynes King. This one doesn't make a lot of sense. Haynes King from Georgia Tech has a 50.66 400-meter time, and not exactly are you able to quantify that into a 100-meter, but if you were, it's going to be somewhere in the 11.3 to 11.5 range. He hit 20.1 miles an hour this previous season, and he's classified as a 4.540. So Hauss Hejny is listed as the fourth fastest, but he should be above Taylon Green. If you or Haynes King. If you want to say he's below Austin Carlisle and Taylon Green, there's some metrics that indicate that is a viable possibility. But him being the third fastest quarterback in college football makes him faster than an Oklahoma State favorite wide receiver, Josh Stewart. It makes him faster than some of the other fast QBs that we've discussed. He's faster than Zach Robinson, who ran a 4.68. He's faster than J.W. Rolls, who ran a 4.56. He's faster than Clint Shelf, who ran a 4.69, a.k.a. he is the fastest Oklahoma State quarterback that has ever stepped on the football field. But we'll keep this thing going. We all remember Josh Cooper, the slot wide receiver, ran a 4.56. David Glidden, also another slot wide receiver who's currently on the Cowboy coaching staff, ran a 4.52. Dez Bryant, the dude who could rock the X better than anybody else in the country, ran a 4.52. A.J. Green was a speedster who we all recognize, not only for his talents at a corner, but his return game was extra special as well, 4.62. DeJon Stribling, who's up as one of the top 100 players in the country entering the season after transferring to Ole Miss. DeJon Stribling ran a 4.52. Jalen Warren, the starting running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He ran a 4.55 at the combine. Chuba Hubbard, who was a 200-meter, 300-meter hurdles champion, was the number one ranked track and field athlete coming out of Canada. He ran a 4.48. Tay Martin, we will talk about in segment 3 today, had a big day for the Washington Commanders, 4.57. Rodarius Williams, who started a couple years for the Giants before he had a couple devastating injuries, 4.53. Gavin Freeman, we've seen him return kicks for OU for touchdowns. We've seen him return kicks at Oklahoma State for crazy yardage. We've seen him catch touchdowns and run routes and juke and move people at Oklahoma State and OU. Gavin Freeman ran a 4.47. We're almost ready to put this into the final context. The only player on the team that we know for sure is faster than Hauss Hejny is Jalen Lloyd. And that's because Jalen Lloyd won the 2022, national championship in the long jump, and he also finished third in the nation in the 100-meter. To continue to put this in context, so some of the fastest Cowboys that would be faster than Hauss Hejny: Prentice Elliott, 4.33. Tatum Bell, 4.34. Tyron Johnson, 4.34. Justice Hill, 4.40. Brennan Presley, BP, who we're also going to talk about in segment 3, 4.46. Exact same 40 as Hauss Hejny. Justin Blackman, 4.46. So Hauss Hejny, it's not just a statement of where we're going to use two quarterbacks because we're unsure. No, Hauss Hejny is going to play no matter who wins the QB1 spot. And yes, it does seem to be likely Zane. But he's going to play not because we're not sure of Zane, not because we don't know what's happening at quarterback, not because we're trying to give fair treatment. It's because he's so fast that he has to play. If Hauss Hejny gets in the open field, he's almost untackleable. He's legitimately Brennan Presley and Justin Blackman fast. That's absolutely incredible speed. That's why Hauss Hejny is going to be the X factor, not only for this Oregon game, but likely throughout the course of the season. He's the fastest quarterback to ever play at Oklahoma State. I didn't see Tony Lindsay's 40, 100-meter time, but it could be something comparable. But Hauss Hejny is that fast. Hauss Hejny did win state titles in the state of Texas for track and field. Plus, he's 210 pounds now. So this is without the Rob Glass factory being brought into this equation. Hauss Hejny is that fast. That's why Hauss Hejny is going to play no matter what happens with the quarterback one situation. And I do think that is an X factor candidate for why Oregon needs to be paying attention. Does Oregon collectively have more team speed? Yeah, probably. You would hope so. At the home of Nike track and field, the Bill Bowerman, ascendance for Oregon University has always been in existence before they were good at football. But by and large, they don't still have very many people that can catch Hauss Hejny, that can touch Hauss Hejny, that can keep up with Hauss Hejny. And more than one of them that I can find, they're all on the offensive side of the ball. So unless Oregon plans on putting all of their wide receivers at corner or putting their backup quarterback as a free safety, if Hauss Hejny gets out in the open field, there's one dude on the defense that we know for sure that can track him down. Other than that, he is the X factor that they're going to have a hard time preparing for. Whether it's 5 snaps, 15 snaps, 35 snaps, Hauss Hejny is the individual that people need to be paying attention to. And even Oklahoma State country hasn't necessarily put it in perspective. Well, why is Hauss Hejny going to play? It's because of this. He's not just fast. He is next level fast. He is, if he wanted to train for track only, he could have a future kind of fast. So yes, Hauss Hejny is the X factor that Oregon and everybody else in the Big 12 needs to pay attention to because it is rare speed. He's a rare dude. And we're probably going to give Oregon all they can handle. Does that mean we're going to win? No. But whatever the spread is, you can dump that in the trash. I'd imagine the spread's probably going to come in around 17-ish. I don't think that's going to happen. Oklahoma State, Oregon is going to be significantly closer than most people are going to assume. And a large portion of that is because of Hauss Hejny. You have to get prepared for your ticket getting times for Oklahoma State football and many, many other things like concerts, music, comedy, theater, whatever it is. Game Time has you covered. And we've all been there, right? We've logged on to something early, waiting forever on something like concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose our spot for the show we've been dying to see. Live music should definitely be about making memories, not necessarily dealing with all the stress of buying tickets and how to do all the ticket shopping. This is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with their last-minute killer deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, Game Time Zone Picks gives you the best seats in the section you need for you. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There's no hidden fees. If you're worried about what happens if plans have to come up and change, that's okay. The Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. This is your time. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets, show tickets, Oklahoma State tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create that account. Redeem that code LOCKEDONCLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. It is last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. From Game Time to DeSean Brown and Jaleel Johnson time. Yes, Mike Gundy did recently mention how this has to be a big season for Jaleel Johnson and DeSean Brown. They've both been in the system for a while. They were roommates together at one point in time. They were competing together at one point in time. Now, essentially, they're seemingly competing against each other to some degree, but on opposite sides of the field. One of the biggest reasons why I think you can look at DeSean Brown and Jaleel Johnson as major players in whatever success the Cowboys are about to have, it's primarily predicated upon the depth behind them. Oklahoma State was aggressive in going and acquiring some talent. So whether it's going to be a Rashad Bradley that's pushing, or Alana Dean, or the UTEP freshman All-American transfer Kyron Duhon, I think Armstrong Nodum has the capability to flex in or out. Michael Riles is a big-time 4-star get for Oklahoma State this previous season. And that's just from the guys putting their hand in the dirt down low. I do think that the linebackers and his versatility, Jaleel Johnson specifically, having the ability to play a little bit of that jack spot, a little bit of that three-man front spot, is going to be big for him. We've talked about how Wendell Gregory's been able to show out and make his name very, very known recently. Malik Charles, somebody who's put on over 53 pounds while at Oklahoma State in a very short amount of time. He's drawing a lot of comparisons to what Colin Oliver potentially could have been with a significant amount of weight. You also have Taj McCoy coming over from Colorado. Then you have to factor in Chandavian Bradley. Then you can factor in Tamarick Johnson, who was a big-time get for Oklahoma State this previous season. The depth is what's going to be pushing these guys to unprecedented levels. So much so, whenever you go get a freshman All-American like Kyron Duhan, there's a large number of people that assumed he would kind of take hold of one of these starting spots and run away with it. It doesn't seem as though that has happened. Same could be said to some degree about Jaleel Johnson. With his versatility and ability to pop out outside as well, he was going to be a runaway locomotive for being the top dude at the defensive end spot. And while DeSean Brown and Jaleel Johnson certainly are those guys for the most part, it's the people behind them that are pushing them that I think gives Oklahoma State the best chances to be successful this year. It's kind of, I don't want to say easy, right? It's never easy to hold on to your job at this level, but it's kind of easy to hang on to your job whenever the guys behind you aren't exactly oriented to be able to push you, whether it be from a technical aspect or the fact that both Jaleel and DeSean have put on 30, 40, 50 pounds over their time at Oklahoma State. The fact that whenever you hear Mike Gundy discuss these dudes by dropping their names and saying we need big things out of them, Mike Gundy's a close to the vest kind of guy. Right? Mike Gundy doesn't traditionally come out and mention people by name and say we have to have bigger seasons out of them. This is their time to shine. That is primarily why we need to be excited about DeSean Brown and Jaleel Johnson, not to mention the fact that the technical aspects have increased tremendously. What Coach Ryan Osborne has been able to bring into the fold is something that neither one of them have ever received before. The technical aspects of how to get your body to acquire more leverage and acquire more capabilities and give a little bit of a shimmy or a shake one direction or the other to get yourself in a position to end up in the backfield. This isn't just the area of operation crew. This isn't just the dudes eating up double teams to make the guys behind them a little bit more freed up. This is a crew that is trying to get on the statistical categories, that is trying to obviously do their best to clear up room for the linebackers. But at the same point in time, this group is going to be a problem. And then lastly, I'll mention the inside crew. Whenever you defensively don't have to account so much for the defensive tackles, it allows you to get another extra hand out on the defensive end or get an extra chip from a tight end or a running back. But whenever you do have to respect the inside presence so much that you're not able to kind of provide that extra help as an additional lineman, then it's going to open things up for everybody else. This is more isolation territory for Oklahoma State. Whether it be Amon Oates or Sidvini Hafili Kavusi or Demarion Thomas, those are dudes that are going to require offensive linemen to eat up some double teams, which means you got one-on-one matchups for DeSean Brown at times. You're going to have one-on-one matchups for Jaleel Johnson at times. You're going to have some of those individuals sometimes eat up multiple blocks. So if you have a double team on the inside, and then you have a Jaleel Johnson or a DeSean Brown eating up a tackle and a running back, then that's going to open things up for the linebackers. That's going to allow Brian McCloy to utilize his ability to read, react, and gain the upper hand when it comes to angles much, much more quickly. Contain is another factor here. Whenever Jaleel Johnson is somebody that's 270 pounds that also has the ability to go out and play the jack linebacker spot, that means athletically, we feel pretty confident about his ability to not only be a disruptor, to get in on the statistical categories, but also be a contained guy. And coming into Oklahoma State, DeSean Brown was already an extremely athletic dude, which is why he rocks the number of a wide receiver, because he is that capable athletically. Now, we've covered how many times DeSean has been within inches of getting a sack or, a couple inches of having a goal line stand tackle. Jaleel Johnson, this previous season, definitely showed that he has the ability to jump out on the page and make a name for himself. This is the emergent season for both of them, but it goes beyond just them. It goes beyond just the body by glass factor. You can put on 40, 50 some odd pounds. That's great. You can increase your 40. You can increase your body fat percentage. But when you have the technical training that Ryan Osborne is bringing with the intensity and the cutthroat nature in which everything's being oriented, like Ryan Osborne and Todd Grantham are bringing, plus all of the competition, that is precisely why I think that this is going to be a big season for both of them. Mike Gundy's right. They have to step up. But let's not kid ourselves. They were going to start last year pretty much no matter what, just because we didn't have a lot of depth behind them. As Gundy mentioned, whenever you have somebody like Obi Ezegbo filling in for that jack spot at 225, 230 pounds, it definitely puts them at a disadvantage, especially when you're trying to cover the tight ends or you're trying to cover some of the bigger running backs. That disadvantage is gone. Tamarick Johnson factors into, the athleticism of this crew. So if Landine can push and Kyron Duhon can push, there's reason to be excited. Because with all of the acquisitions we got in the transfer portal, all of the NIL money that we were able to step up with, there's not going to be any shortage of aggression. There's not going to be any shortage of talent. The best players are going to play. And with all of the acquisitions that Oklahoma State has brought in, I think it's safe to say that there's a decent number in the fan base that assumed that somebody like a Kyron Duhon would actually take one of these jobs. So if that hasn't happened, to me, that reeks the upgrades over DeSean Brown and Jaleel Johnson compared to their last season or the last couple seasons. This is that time for them. Also, this has been a good time for some Cowboys in the preseason, so let's kind of cover some of the top ones over the weekend. Several Cowboys got into the NFL preseason action over the weekend, and there were some that did not, right? And whenever you're thinking of a Jalen Warren or Malcolm Rodriguez, those are dudes that don't necessarily need to play. Same could be said about Chuba Hubbard. So why push them in a scenario that doesn't make a lot of sense? Tylan Wallace is another individual. Got a little bit, but there's no need to push it. There's no need to stress it. There's no need to put him in a precarious situation. So he didn't. So let's highlight some of the dudes. And you know what? We'll go from a couple honorable mentions. A.J. Green. A.J. Green had a really resurgent style of game for him, playing cornerback for the Rams. He had a solo tackle. He had 2 pass deflections as well. So A.J. Green was very evident in that game as a Ram. I think there's another DB that we have to take into account here over the weekend. Where did I put him? Trey Flowers. All right, Trey Flowers. We had 5 tackles, I believe, including 2 or 3 solo tackles. He did give up a touchdown, but other than that, Trey Flowers was fairly squarely in the mix of some of the top Cowboys over the weekend. All right, and then we got to mention Nick Martin. Nick Martin had 5 tackles, 2 solo. He had a massive tackle at one point in time in the game. He also did have 3 missed tackles as well. That is the only reason that he's not like squarely in the beginning of this list. Then we got to go, I would say Amen Mamiga is in that mix, right? He did a little bit. Oh, Trey Flowers, there he is. I wrote it down. 6 tackles, 4 solo. So, yeah, Trey Flowers definitely needs some love alongside A.J. Green. And then we'll bump into the top 5 for me over this previous weekend. And let's see. Well, I didn't write it. Yeah, Trey Flowers was number 5. Tay Martin, 3 targets for the Washington Commanders, 3 receptions, 36 yards, average 12 yards per completion. He looked not only good, not only serviceable, but somebody who should be competing for time here. Another individual that we have to go to next is going to be Brennan Presley. He had 1 rush for 15 yards, 2 receptions for 11 yards. He also had a big return for 38 yards. That kind of separated himself from some of the other wide receivers that are obviously competing for spots. Also with the Rams, Emmanuel Agba had 4 tackles, 2 of those being solo. Tyler Lacey, he's another individual that was able to get in on the statistical categories with a tackle himself. Didn't see any stats for Rashad Owens, unfortunately. But how about Ollie Gordon? He's definitely number two. Number two dude for Oklahoma State over this previous weekend. Ollie had 8 carries for 33 yards, 4.1 yards per carry. He also had a touchdown. He also had a massive fourth down reception that went for 39 yards. So Ollie Gordon definitely looked better than the backup right. The guy who they brought in to be a kind of big body beast to compete with Ollie for that RB3 spot, he's injured, and before he got injured, it's not necessarily like he was setting the world on fire. Ollie Gordon's first carry was boom, a couple tackles, breaks a couple tackles, and banks a pretty big one out there. And then we got to talk about number one, Mason Rudolph. Is he the backup to Aaron Rodgers? Yeah, sure. But he was almost perfect. He went 9 for 10, 84 yards with a touchdown. He opened the game, driving all the way down the field. And the beauty of it was there were some times that he had to absolutely zip it in there, right? Some Cowboy zip. But there was also some times he had to layer it, right, over the linebackers, in between the linebackers and the safeties. The touchdown he threw to the tight end, that was a layered throw. He also had the capability to chunk it deep and put a little air under it to allow the wide receiver to get himself in a position to make the grab. So Mason Rudolph looked much more advanced. Mason Rudolph looked like not only a serviceable quarterback too, but that version of Mason Rudolph looked like somebody who could lead the Steelers into the playoffs. I'm not wishing anything negatively on Aaron Rodgers. When healthy, Aaron Rodgers is like a first ballot Hall of Famer. So I would think that even Mason Rudolph is very understanding that when you bring in a legend that's going to be in Canton very, very, very quickly, if he's healthy, not only can he read defenses to a different level, not only can he explain the diagnosis to a different level, but he's got the talent to make some of the throws that a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL cannot. Mason Rudolph deserves an opportunity. He got some decent opportunities last year with the Titans. Too bad they were like the worst team in the NFL. He's had some moments in his time as a Pittsburgh Steeler. But it's nice to see that Steeler fans are coming out and saying, you know what? Maybe we're sleeping on Mason. Maybe Mason Rudolph is the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers, because I don't think anyone questions this is Aaron Rodgers last year. I think he's even mentioned that as well. So after this season, right, could it be Will Howard? Possibly. Could it be Skylar Thompson? Maybe. He looked really good as well. Shout out to the K-State Wildcat. And behind him, Will Howard, another former K-State Wildcat. So you've got Big 12 quarterback Mason Rudolph, former Big 12 quarterback Skylar Thompson, former Big 12 quarterback Will Howard. Pretty unique deal they have going on with the Steelers. And then we didn't get to see Jaylen Warren, but that's because in the preseason they're going to keep him healthy for the most part. A pretty exciting weekend overall for some former Cowboys. But to me, Mason Rudolph, Ollie Gordon, they definitely stole the show. Brennan Presley looked good. Trey Flowers looked good. AJ Green looked pretty good. Emmanuel Ogbah looked pretty good. Nick Martin, he was the one that we forgot to mention. That good stats. What did I say? 5 tackles, a couple solo. The problem was he had a few misses. But it was nice to see several Cowboys get in on the action. Amen Mbangmamiga for the Bears. He also had a tackle as well, but he didn't perform as well as Trey. It was nice to see AJ Green back out there for the Rams. I think Brennan Presley definitely did enough to prove that when they start cutting down the roster, he's not going to be one of the first ones to go. That's for daggone sure. They just have to keep it up. All right, y'all. Let me know in the comment section who you watched over the weekend and who you were most impressed by. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button. Dislike it if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, though, share, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. My podcast and people out there, you know what it is. You're everything that makes this work. So I appreciate everything that you do. So go do what you do. Hit some stars. Leave some reviews. All righty, y'all. Later, taters.